I want to try to get through this as quick as I can. Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, and we'll get through this together. Please buckle your seatbelts because we do have a lot to go over, and I'm going to try to get through this as quick as I can. And I'm not going to really get into the historical details. There are Wikipedia articles that do a great job at that. They're just fine at doing that. The history of Israel-Palestine. The Surf Times made a great video a couple days ago detailing just what the crisis that's going on. Vosh has made a great video regarding Andrew Yang, and he explains the situation, Israel-Palestine, the history, what's going on, why it matters, why it's wrong, and Secular Talk. There are a whole bunch of lefty channels that I subscribe to that cover this fairly, more so than any mainstream outlet would. However, I gotta give credit to CNN and MSNBC for actually having on Mohammed El-Kurd before he was arrested, detailing just the horrendous actions being committed upon Palestinians by Israeli forces. This all started when basically Israeli police were not evicting Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem, but forcefully removing them. They were kicking them out of their own homes and saying, hey, you don't live here anymore. This is illegal under international law. They're basically was dispossessing them of their property. This is their property. It's their land. It's really not that complicated, but a lot of people are pretending that it is. But this is how it all started. There were protests, and of course, the big picture here is the power dynamic between Israel and Palestine. It's not even close to symmetrical. To suggest so to both sides, this is an insult to my intelligence. To anyone who is actually paying attention, to anyone who knows the history and has an honest view of it, not the view that you get from the ultra nationalists that live in Israel, or simp for Israel, for lack of a better term. You would see that Israel is the aggressor. There's a lot that I could point. There's a lot that I can point to. We're going to go over multiple tweets, but basically. Let's see here. I wrote this earlier. Israel is a terrorist state that has long committed brutal apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and disproportionate attacks on Palestinians, killing thousands of innocents, and should face trial for violating international law, basic human rights, and perpetuating war crimes, which was happening. In the second or third most holiest site of Islam is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and since these Palestinians were depossessed of their homes, they're literally rendered homeless by the state of Israel. They go to a holy site, a mosque. It's the middle of Ramadan, and this mosque gets stormed into by Israeli police. There's tear gas, less lethal rounds being deployed. Just you can see all sorts of videos in occupied East Jerusalem of Palestinians being brutalized. Again, keep in mind that power dynamic, because Palestinians don't really have the rights that Israelis do, Hebrews do in Israel. The courts are unfairly stacked against them. It's it's like they're second-class citizens. It's apartheid. And so in Sheikh Jarrah, I hope I'm not pronouncing that right. Here, let me make myself smaller here. Just the protests were breaking out, and this is a good starting point. Used to be Palestine, then after World War II, Jewish settlements started funneling in, and over time you can clearly see that there's nothing left of next to nothing left of Palestinian territory. But somehow we're supposed to believe, and Western media has been really good at this, that Palestinians are just the savages, the aggressors. They're backwards people, and they're all terrorists, and they're all out set to destroy Israel. And the thing is, Hamas is kind of what you get when you've been facing decades of brutal apartheid, annexing of territories, just the poor treatment of your people. Like I said, the history, you can look up the history. There's plenty of sources on it. But what's happening right now is basically ethnic cleansing. Israel is dead set on basically wiping away the Palestinian people from the land. The Gaza Strip is basically an open-air prison. You can't leave unless it's like a real, like, urgent, like, you have to prove that it's dire, that it's an emergency. And even so, like, you basically can't leave. If you're in Gaza, you're Palestinian, you live in hell. You basically live in hell. And the reason why Israel is so dead set on just erasing Palestinians, which, funny enough, there's a video that Ben Shapiro retweeted of, and this has made the rounds, a bunch of ultra-nationalist Jewish Hebrews that were dancing and singing as they were watching the Al-Aqsa Mosque set aflame. And everybody was asking Ben, what are they singing, Ben? Because they're singing in, I think it's Yiddish. I'm pretty sure that's the language, Hebrew. And they were singing, may they all be erased. May their names be erased. They're talking about the Palestinians. The clashes, you have the Israeli state, and then you have the ultra nationalist, like far right extremists in Israel that are anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, just cracking down on Palestinians who can't even defend themselves. And if they do, it's absolutely insane. It's like your school bully, right? Say the school bully is Israel, and you're just an impoverished kid. This bully is just pristine, or esteemed, wealthy, well-off. Like, everybody protects him because he's got something on everybody. This giant built dude, and you're just this meek, weak, poor person. That's Palestine. And pretend you throw a rock at this guy, and his response is to literally just blow you up into a million pieces. That's basically the power dynamic right now between Israel-Palestine, and has been for a while. Now, I remember in May 2018, when the Gaza Strip was a war zone, like it kind of always is, and how the IDF was just mowing down people. They were like, people were dying everywhere. I think like 400 people ended up being killed or something like that, including countless children. Back then, it was like May 2018. That was when I was starting to come off my my somewhat conservative phase, and that kind of really changed my perspective on a lot of things. That definitely played a huge role, because the IDF was basically shooting civilians who were running away, like sniping people, and there's never been accountability. Right now, like, Israel can do anything to Palestinians and just get away with it, and it's been that way for a long time. Lots of people don't understand this. Lots of people excuse it. So we're gonna get through a bunch of tweets here as quick as I can, and I have certain things to say when I come across each one, because I'm trying to remember. I have a lot of things to say, and these tweets will remind me. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez: we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian residents of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem. Israeli forces are forcing families from their homes during Ramadan and inflicting violence. It is inhumane, and the U.S. must show leadership in safeguarding the human rights of Palestinians. Of course, this hasn't happened. Palestine has barely even been... The word Palestine, the word Palestinians, has not even really been mentioned at all by America, by Joe Biden, anyone. Of course, Ben Shapiro, Mr. Facts, Mr. Logic. Israel goes through a decades-long legal process to adjudicate whether families who have been illegally squatting in Jewish-owned homes ought to be evicted. Fatah and Hamas proceed to riot actively in terror attacks and fire rockets. The international community blames Israel. And right here, they are not Jewish-owned homes, and you know it. If a judge in the U.S. ruled your home legally belonged to me, I doubt you would move out without a fight. Everyone sees your hypocrisy and deception. This is complete. This is on point. Illegally squatting my ass. Ben is such a goddamn simp for Israel. It's insanely pathetic. From Know Nothing, just so you know, some of these tweets will be from the same people, you know, because some people have more than one good take. Why doesn't the Israeli government simply hire Ben Shapiro to debate the Palestinians? He can use facts and logic to explain to them that they don't deserve their own land. And this is what I was going to touch on. So, you guys know why Israel doesn't want Palestinians on their land, the Holy Land? I touched on this a little bit in my Democrats are not the same as Republicans video back, like right before the election, like the day of. I should have put that way sooner. But basically, if you're an evangelical Christian, you believe in the rapture, you believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ, and according to God, the Jewish people are God's chosen people. And so, in order for the rapture to commence and the second coming of Jesus Christ, and thereby the apocalypse, the Holy Land must be clear of anyone who's not Jewish. Anyone who's not chosen by God. And that's why thousands upon thousands of Palestinians, including children, are being needlessly slaughtered. There are videos on Twitter that are being taken down of the Gaza Strip currently being bombed as we speak, and it's just horrifying. Like, just deafening bombs being dropped around, like a home, a family. Like you hear the family screaming, the children just crying, and you can tell, you just know that at any moment one of those Israeli bombs could just drop right in that house and that family's dead. That's how close the bombs were. And after the initial airstrikes, there's a video that went around. I shared it on my Twitter, and it shows the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike on Palestinians. Just gruesome images of dead children, just bloodied in pools of blood, traumatic blunt force injuries, and there's just fragmentations everywhere. It's just rubble. Yet pieces of shit like Ben Shapiro and the hardcore evangelical conservative right, the fascists, they either don't care. I mean, they don't care. That's it. They know that's happening, but it's like, well, Hamas shouldn't be firing rockets into Israel. Yeah, like a bunch of homemade rockets that get deflected by the Iron Dome missile system that rarely ever getting past, that warrants, mass slaughter. That warrants ethnic cleansing, genocide, massacres of innocent people, civilians. We'll get to more of that. And children. Don't forget. Bernie Sanders, the United States must speak out strongly against the violence by... Oh, I guess I better shrink this. The United States must speak out strongly against the violence by government-allied Israeli extremists in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, and make clear that the evictions of Palestinian families must not go forward. The only thing he got wrong here was evictions. These weren't evictions. These were forced removals. Evictions apply as a landlord, and these homes belonged to the Palestinians. From Ilhan Omar, many will tell you Israel has a right to defend itself to safety and security, but are silent on whether Palestinians have those rights too. Until we can defend the rights of Palestinians, just as we do Israelis, we have no leg to stand on when it comes to justice or peace. Absolutely. Oh boy. Let's talk briefly about Andrew Yang. I'm standing with the people of Israel who are coming under bombardment attacks and condemn the Hamas terrorists. The people of NYC will always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face down terrorism and persevere. No one like that. He got ratioed to high hell. I am a Jew, and this is a bad take. Israel is ethnically cleansing Palestinians in East Jerusalem. People fighting back against this are not terrorists. The U.S. supports bad stuff, and this is near the top of the list, along with still doing maintenance on Saudi planes in Yemen, which is true. Speaking of genocides, Mike Figueredo responds, will you condemn terrorism by the Israeli government, Andrew Yang? Or do you think it's justified when Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah get brutalized or murdered for refusing to give up their homes? Yeah, so this really, I was excited for Andrew Yang to possibly become the mayor of New York, but this is inexcusable, indefensible, abhorrent, sociopathic, and I really hope that he loses miserably. And hope people in New York choose someone better. Plug right here for Diane Morales. From Kyle Kolinsky, Operation Protective Edge in 2014, the last time Israel bombed relentlessly while playing the victim, 80% of Palestinians killed were innocent civilians. 80% of Palestinians killed were innocent civilians. Many of the fatalities have been children, and 1,360 more have been wounded. Yeah, but it's both sides that are the problem. It's symmetrical, you know. It's a war. It's not an eradication or anything like that. Yeah, right here. From Rob Rousseau, it's not a conflict when one side is allowed to use violence and the other isn't. Another one from Kyle. U.S. politicians and media always say Israel has a right to defend itself. Do Palestinians? Echoing that point. From the Serfs. What a surprise! Everyone who was up in arms about the treatment of Uyghur Muslims and in China is completely silent about to the treatment of Palestinian ones at the hands of Israel. Curious. Another one from Kyle. Non-controversial statement that is considered very controversial in this grotesquely corrupt and rotten system. The U.S. should cut off all arms and funding to human rights violators. Reasons this will never happen. Defense contractors basically own the government. American exceptionalism is a cult among many DC elites. They truly believe us and our allies are brave and noble democracy defenders. Facts be damned. And also, we're the biggest human rights violator, which is pretty true. He made a good point in a video he made recently about like Israel, and we'll get to this in a little bit. Israel's playing the victim. They're defending the fact that their strikes are killing innocent civilians and children by saying, "Oh, I mean Hamas. They're using human shields. We gotta get the bad guys." So defending bombing schools and hospitals and all that. And it's like, I love this point that Cal made. If a terrorist gang of some sort in America took siege of a school, held it hostage, and threatened to just held the school hostage. What would the police response be in this case if we're talking about like comparing this to Israel-Palestine? The police response would be to the public would be, so we're going to bomb this school so we can get the bad guys. We got to get the bad guys, so we're just going to bomb the school. Because they don't care about civilian casualties. They don't care about the deaths of children. Children are, by definition, innocent. Especially in this... it's been a long past few days. I mean, right here, Palestinians have no aviation. They have no navy. They have no army. This is no war in Gaza. This is a genocide. I say cut off all defense funding and arms sales to Israel. Again, this is all because of religion. Because they think Jesus Christ will come back if the right kind of people are in the right kind of in the right spot designated by whatever. And Ilhan responds to someone responded to her. What about being pro-Palestinian and pro-Jewish? Is that too hard for you? Silly question. Of course it is. She says, it's not. Stop equating critiques of a military action, killing innocent children, with an entire faith. We can fight anti-Semitism and human rights abuses at the same time. In fact, our common humanity demands it. And this is in response to Biden saying, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. Just cowardly take, obviously. Blanket statements like these with little context or acknowledgement of what precipitated the cycle of violence, namely the expulsions of Palestinians and attacks on Al-Aqsa, which is the mosque that we were talking about, dehumanize Palestinians and imply the U.S. will look the other way at human rights violations. It's wrong. And, I say, Israel has a right to defend itself. Not only has nothing to do with the heinous atrocities that the Israeli government is committing blatantly, but it implies the Palestinians don't have that right. I love Cody Johnson. You should subscribe to some more news. What's your favorite movie where the heroes are like, we have a right to defend ourselves. Shoot through the human shields. It's same logic that's going on. And yeah. I can't show this for obvious reasons. But I mentioned it earlier. Children killed by Israeli airstrikes. We're going to watch this one here together from the Empire Files, who have done amazing work over the past several years regarding the apartheid in Israel, the Gaza Strip, the treatment of Palestinians, etc. So, yeah, if you can stomach it, here we go.
They're paying them to get shot, believe it or not.
Only 2 seconds in, and that's probably the dumbest thing that anyone has ever said in the history of anything. Yeah. Being paid to get shot.
They're paying them like $500 per gunshot wound. You know, Hamas sent a 7-year-old girl who was wearing a Minnie Mouse sweatsuit right up to the fence so that IDF troops would, in their perverse, in the perverse mindset of Hamas, would shoot her and kill her.
It is reported that someone in a wheelchair.
Wow. Think the mental gymnastics that you could see that guy going through. Like, oh yeah, it's Hamas's fault that the IDF decides to shoot a little girl, a child. Yeah. It's not the IDF forces that are sick and twisted in that regard.
Mindset of Hamas would shoot her and kill her.
It is reported that someone in a wheelchair was fatally shot, Mr. Ambassador.
Hamas is always very good at trying to put out all sorts of propaganda and myths. They're experts at that.
And they intentionally moved up the date.
And that's the thing, like, what media power does Palestine have? None. No one ever talks about them. Like, Muhammad El-Kurd, who was on CNN and MSNBC earlier in the week, talking about the atrocities being committed on Palestinians, that never happens. Ever. Ever. They're going through an ethnic cleansing at the hands of Israel. Like, pretty sure this is Barry Weiss, just an absolutely terrible person.
Be disgusted and heartbroken when we saw this horrible split screen of Ivanka Trump looking like she was at a country club next to poor, desperate people dying in Gaza.
I agree with you. They planned that, absolutely.
Right, and I'm just saying, let's not fall for a trap that is being set by a theocratic, authoritarian group that is sending women and children.
I don't think I'm falling for a trap.
Shield.
I couldn't agree more with all of that.
I think it's...
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Gaza is in extreme poverty, obviously. To think this is how deep and how long the propaganda has gone. Palestinians are completely dehumanized. They're all treated as terrorists, like, automatically. These people... there are people alive today that lived in Palestine without, like before Jewish settlements popped up. We're gonna keep going.
It's terrible that Hamas is butchering its own children. Hamas is conducting massive self-genocide.
Bet you never heard that term before. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Yeah. Like, what? Look, Hamas has said, like, we want a ceasefire. We want there to be peace. We're open to a two-state solution. And not even Benjamin Netanyahu wants that. Not even Israel wants that. This is the thing. Israel has so much power that they can literally establish peace whenever they want to, as soon as possible. Like, the Iron Dome protects them from missile attacks. Like, they are strapped with billions in armaments, whereas Palestinians are starving. They have next to nothing. But Israel chooses not to. Because what does Israel want? They want there to be no Palestinians on that land. They'll keep annexing territories until they are wiped clean from the land. That's their goal. That's it.
They want to pile up as many civilian dead as they can, because somebody said they use, I mean, it's gruesome, they use telegenically dead Palestinians for their cause. They want the more dead, the better. They're pushing.
What the hell does telegenically mean? Having a physical appearance and exhibiting personal qualities that are deemed highly appealing. Oh. This is one of the most evil men living right now. As long as this guy has power, there will never be peace between Israel and Palestine. Yeah, telegenically dead. Yeah, of course, dead children that have been killed by the result of Israeli airstrikes or IDF forces, IDF soldiers gunning them down. Of course, that's what the hell is the word again? Telegenically dead. Like, people give a shit about that, but of course he doesn't, because he's literally a sociopath. He's psychopathic. He wants to see the Palestinians all dead.
Palestinians for their cause. They want the more dead, the better. They're pushing civilians, women,
talk about projection.
Children into the line of fire with the view of getting casualties. We try to minimize the casualties. They're trying to incur casualties in order to put pressure on Israel, which is horrible.
What they're deliberately doing is seeking to kill as many Palestinians.
You're seeing lie after lie after lie in real time.
As possible in order to yell to the world to help us.
And much of the world is condemning us for war crimes. Basically, they're serving Hamas's goal. That's just what Hamas is about.
Make no mistake, Hamas is pleased with the results from yesterday. No country in this chamber would act with more restraint than Israel has.
And
yeah, like right now, literally airstriking Gaza, and, you know.
That said, Israel only targeted people who were actively engaged in violence.
We only use live fire in a measured and surgical way.
Why the Israeli forces were shooting dead protesters at the Gaza crossings.
Well, we can't put all these people in jail.
Now, I want everyone to think very hard about this. What we're seeing right now is mass dehumanization on a global scale of the Palestinian people by Israel, basically. It's ironic that after the Holocaust, the Jewish people can basically get their own land, have these settlements, and what they're doing right now is literally the same as when white settlers dispossessed Native Americans in the United States. You know, the Trail of Tears. It's the same as when Oh, jeez. I'm blanking on another one. Oh, jeez. I guess I'll just get right to the prime example, but the way that Germany treated the Jews in World War II. Yeah, when you treat an entire people like they're just all animals, second-class citizens, they don't have any rights, just deny them access to everything, basically. You're basically setting the stage for their extermination. You're setting the stage for their genocide. And that's what we're watching play out. And right here, at least 3 senior Biden administration officials, including Biden himself, spent yesterday assuring complete and unconditional U.S. support to a man who just granted his security forces total impunity. Talking about Benjamin Netanyahu saying, free reign, open fire, basically. The U.S. has essentially greenlighted the genocide of Palestinians by the state of Israel, led by fascist Netanyahu. We'll end on this. The IDF could line up a row of Palestinian children and execute them live on video, and the West would still call it self-defense. Israel could offensively nuke the entire Gaza Strip and still play the victim. This is not hyperbole. This is how bad it is. And that's pretty much it. Today, launched massive bombardment on Gaza, an air and ground assault against besieged civilian population, half of which are children. Can't really show much here, but yeah, a nuclear-armed country with a navy, an air force, and an army with the world's most sophisticated weapons and bombarding an open-air prison, Gaza, a besieged ghetto full of 2 million people with nowhere to run or hide. You can't go anywhere. And our government officials support this atrocity. And this was the video of a family like with bombs going off all around their house. And it's like, imagine this happening where you live, except you have literally nowhere to run, no one to save you, no possible way to defend yourself. And Ilhan Omar was on the floor of the House earlier today, called Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu an ethno-nationalist, which he completely is. He's a far-right ethno-nationalist and a fascist. Yeah, I can't even begin to wrap my head around these. Airstrikes and their intensity and cruelty. How many of you can understand what it feels like to experience 50 to 100 airstrikes at once surrounded by screaming children? None of us. We have no friggin' idea. We have no clue. Yeah, and Mark Pocan, great here. If you cannot even acknowledge the humanity of the Palestinian people, then you're not actually defending human rights. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. I posted some memes recently. I forget where. Where'd they go? I thought I... Weird. I guess they're gone. That's strange. They're all pretty good, too. Yeah, and Biden's old takes on Israel is not very good either. Yeah, this was pretty long. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? Like, there's still so much to say because there's so much that has happened. Yet, it's simple. Like, if you are against the killing of innocent children, then you don't support Israel. I mean, I'm just speechless. I've been looking over this stuff for the past several days, and I hate the fact that this is the video, like, I feel obligated to make, but here it is. Please share this around. It's important that people understand what's going on and why it's going on, especially. And that if you're in support of Israel's actions in any way regarding all of this, you're just completely in the wrong. You're okay with you're de facto okay with ethnic cleansing, bombing civilian structures, the targeting of civilian structures, hospitals, schools, the needless slaughter of innocents, and occupation, illegal occupation, apartheid, and essentially genocide. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter if you haven't, watch my other videos if you haven't as well. I'll see you guys in the next one.